Doug, and we're going from glue bomb to gorgeous. Hey, welcome back to the Full Earth Workshop. Today, gluey body disassembly. In episode number 1, we took apart a Cox slot car from 1965, the whole chassis, and now we are taking the final parts and putting them all into bagging. Very good idea. Make sure we keep everything all together, especially if you're working on more than one slot car or possibly other projects. You don't want to get them all messed up. Okay, let's take a summary look at this glue bomb that I purchased from eBay. An example of maybe the worst. And we're going to see if we can end up in first with a nice restoration of a really cool vintage slot car. I think we're pretty fortunate that this piece has survived all these years. This roll bar often is all broken by the time you get it as a used slot car. These things were really played with back in the 60s. The kids that played with these really didn't have preservation in mind. I remember back in the 60s, I used to collect baseball cards like 1968, 1969, and a lot of those baseball cards ended up in the spokes of my bike because it made a really good motor sound. Well, some of those rookie cards are worth in the thousands now. Too early old and too late smart. These are the engine intake stacks that we're going to be taking out here. Usually just to push on that main little hole in the back usually pops this thing loose. You can see some of this stuff that looks like foil is the very thin chrome plating. You know, I don't know whether I've ever seen a car that had more glue on it. If you remember back, most kids used the styrene glue that came in the tubes and it was clear, so a lot of kids would say, hey, this is clear, you won't see it. So they slathered this stuff on all the parts. And in later years, the glue turned yellow, and as you see, it's everywhere. It's going to be quite a challenge to be able to flatten out all these surfaces. You know, I think in the restoration of this car, it's going to be very important to use some parts from another donor car. I have a similar glue bomb, not quite as bad as this one, but some of the parts that are missing on this car, for instance, that front fascia on the lower front of the car, I have that on the other glue bomb, so I'll be removing that and making a casting of it for a replacement part on this car. And then a few things that are missing. I have a steering wheel that I'm going to have to make. And of course, we're probably going to have to redo the windshield. Just so much glue sticking this thing down. This little area here is also a real concern. This is where the driver, I don't know, the kid must have used half a tube of glue here because it has literally melted the area where the driver is. So I believe what I'm going to do there is cut that section out with a rotary tool wheel. This is a vent that comes off. That's pretty nice because I will be able to copy that part. And I'm going to be using that. A later project that we have, I have purchased a casting kit of an old Strombecker Chaparral 2 that was from the same era. Now, not quite as accurate as the Cox unit. It doesn't really have an interior. Some of the exterior parts are out of scale or incorrect. However, it does have a shape that's going to be very conducive to adding some of the aerodynamics that the later car had. Be watching for that in a Series 2. I'm going to be making a Strombecker Cox slot car that might end up being more accurate than either. The windscreen is a part that is probably the most difficult to replace, and yet with a glue bomb, it's usually one that you have to replace. Right here, I'm trying to get this windshield off in one piece. You can use spirits to try to loosen up that glue a little bit. However, it ends up breaking off a little section of it. I don't think I'm going to be able to save this windshield. So what I plan on doing is making a casting of one windscreen that I already have. Then we'll see if we can make several to replace the others that I'm restoring. Windshields are tough because any kind of bubbles shows up in the final product. Sometimes you just got to toss that part out. It looks like there's a whole lot of glue around this steering wheel and control panel. So this is a real project to be able to get this part off. This probably took me about 15 minutes to get this part off. Yep, I think it's molecularly bonded into place. To get the steering wheel out, well, that's pretty simple. Just use a small little bit. That thing just drops out and in perfect condition. Of course, I'll have to get some of the flash off and then make some copies of it for other units that I'm restoring. And this driver, well, I'm very concerned. He has a very bad attitude. Off with your head. You know, I don't want to end up having to paint that driver in place, so I do think we're going to have to end up cutting him out, doing repairs after that. Oh well, we'll take that as it comes. Here is the control panel. You know, we're not going to use a lot of detail on the control panel. With a little bit of research, I found out that the instruments actually are a little further to the left, and the steering wheel did not have a little ring that it was inserted into. So we'll fix that as we go along. Right now, let's put everything into baggies so we don't lose anything. On the last Chaparral that I did, I actually lost the windshield, the most valuable part there is on the whole car. Let's not do that. Ziploc baggies are the mechanical and modeling engineer's friend. Don't you feel safer inside? Now we're going to put it back in the box and seal everything to make sure it's there for when we get emotionally ready, get emotionally strong to do the restoration. Next episode is where we're going to do this. I'm pretty confident that we're going to go from glue bomb to gorgeous, and we'll have more of this foolishness coming up on the next episode. We'll see you then.